Hi, and welcome back to the Easy Do-It-Yourself Landscaping channel, where we give you step-by-step instructions on how to install and maintain beautiful landscaping and gardening projects in your own yard. If you like that kind of content, please be sure and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss a video. In this particular video, we're going to cover how to design and install beautiful planting beds throughout your yard. So let's get started. Okay, so let's take a minute and talk about what items you're going to need in order to install your planting beds. So the first thing you're going to need is, let me start over here on the table. You're going to need a small hammer. I'll explain that in a minute. You're going to need a can of spray paint for marking out your bed, some good scissors, a tape measure. It's always handy to have gloves. And when you put your weed barrier down, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's best to use some kind of product or item to secure that down to the ground. Now you can get landscape staples, but you only get 100 of those in a package, and at the same price you can get roofing nails, and I usually use these 3-inch roofing nails. They have a large head on them. They'll hold the landscape product into the ground real good. And a box like this, a 5-pound box, is about 600 to 700 nails. And it's about the same price as 100 of the landscape staples. So that's what I prefer using, of these nails. They really hold it down good. They're easy to install, and you get tons of them for the price. Now you're going to need some sort of weed barrier, a fabric weed barrier, and I would go with one that's a premium grade or a professional grade. You can get them a lot less expensive that's not, but they won't last near as long, and a lot of the really stubborn weeds will be able to grow through those. So to save yourself a lot of trouble down the road, get a better quality, and it saves you from having to buy more later on and redoing the bed. Then you're going to need a nice spade-tipped shovel, a garden rake for cleaning up around the area, some landscape poles, or any kind of poles that you can stick in the ground for doing long straight beds and getting those straight. And another thing that's handy to have is some kind of knee protection. I use these foam pads. I bought a package of those off of Amazon for $3 or $4, and they work really well because you don't want to be, messing up your knees. You spend a lot of time on your knees putting down the weed barrier, planting plants. Those are really great to have. So the scissors are for cutting the weed barrier, the paints for marking out your bed, tape measures for measuring to get a nice circle bed, and I'll explain how to do that. And then you want to use, like I said, I use the nails because they work best for holding down the weed barrier, and you can get a whole box of them real cheap. So that's really everything that you're going to need in order to install your planting beds. All right, so let's talk a little bit about planting bed layout and design. The first thing you need to do is determine what you're wanting to accomplish in the landscaping project. Do you have problem areas that you need to resolve? Are you wanting to make the yard look a lot better with a landscaping job? Just what exactly is your goal? In this case, we had a couple of problem areas. First off, right here in the foreground, there was a area where the water stood, so we had to get something to resolve that, some kind of plan to resolve that. And then out in the middle of the yard was totally overgrown with large old growth trees that were really in bad shape. They were hanging over the house and just really looked unsightly. The yard had no grass. It was all dirt and rocks and weeds. So we had to get that resolved. I knew that I wanted to have plants down the walkway, and I wanted to have plants going down the driveway like that. So I knew I wanted a thin bed down the driveway and one down the walkway. And I also knew that out in the area where we had the trees taken down, I had 22 trees taken down out of this yard, and all the stumps ground down so that we could do this project. So I knew out in that area I wanted to have a large bed with some ornamental trees that are, grow and really become beautiful. A lot of flowers and a lot of interest in the yard. So, like I said, the first thing I did had all the trees taken down, 22 in all, in this front yard. And once those were down, had the stumps ground down, then I cleared away a lot of that stump mulch that was left over. I saved some of it for planting purposes down the road and tried to smooth it out as much as I can. Now, I left a little bit of the mounds in order to do this large bed in the middle. So you kind of got to work with what you have, unless you bring a lot of heavy equipment in, things like that. You really got to work with what you have. It's a do it yourself, or normally you're not going to have heavy equipment to be able to be doing stuff. So do it yourselfers definitely have to work with what they have. So I had a little bit of mounding in the front area here. So I ended up making all that one big large bed because it was easier to do that than try to move all that soil and out without, just a shovel and me doing it. So that's the first thing you want to do is look at what you have, look at what you want to accomplish, and then figure out what you have to work with, and then figure out what your problem areas are, and just try to get all that resolved. So with this walkway, I knew I wanted to have a solid hedge down there, so I ended up making a 3-foot wide bed that follows the walkway. I chose 3 foot because that's about the standard length of most of the fabric weed barrier. So I just went with that width. And then I planted this row of boxwoods down through there. Eventually they'll grow together. Now it's wintertime, so you don't see any flowers or anything in the yard. All the grass is tan because it's Bermuda grass and it's, February. But also all these boxwoods are all going to grow together, but they're normally green. They're kind of a golden kind of color during the wintertime. So eventually they'll grow together and make one big solid hedge. So I accomplished that. And then down the driveway, I knew I wanted to have lariat all the way down through the driveway. So I ended up doing another 3-foot bed all the way up the driveway with the lariat all the way down. And then at the top I put in some azaleas and a spilled pot decoration, which basically is a leaning over pot, and then you plant low growth flowering plants inside of it and then out of it where it looks like they're spilling out of it. So that was a couple of things I wanted to accomplish. And then, like I said, I wanted to get a lot of flowers and ornamental trees in the middle of the yard. So I replaced the big trees that we had taken out with a couple of red maples, one in the foreground and then one in the far distance. Like I said, it's hard to see those because it's in the wintertime and they don't have any leaves. In the center is a Japanese maple, and then on the far right corner is a pink dogwood. And then all the plants in the middle, most of those are azaleas of different colors because they flower all throughout the summer. And then all the way around the perimeter, I have daylilies in different colors and different batches. The yellow plants that you see are golden hollies, gold tip hollies, and I planted those in little groups of 3, and they stay yellow year round pretty much. They're a lot yellower during the summer, and they'll yellow up really nice, and they'll stay low. They only get up about knee high or so. So that's basically the way I designed this landscape. So that's the main thing you got to do is kind of look at the project overall, Figure out what you want to accomplish. Figure out what your problem areas are. Figure out what kind of plants you want to have and what kind of plant design you want to have. Do you want to have a lot of flowers? You want to have a lot of small flowering plants like lilies? You want to have large flowering plants like rose bushes or azaleas or something like that? You want to add some ornamental trees like these red maples or a Japanese maple or a dogwood? And figure out what kind of space you need for that and get all those put in place. And that's pretty much all you need to know is on the design. And once you have it all designed out, then you can go through and do all the installation of the beds, which we'll be covering next. Okay, so once you have the locations of your beds laid out as far as where you want to put them, then the next thing to do is actually get the beds installed. And that's very easy to do, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. First thing you want to do is once you figure out what you're wanting to accomplish, I usually take a can of spray paint and I'll mark out the whole edge of the bed all the way around, just spraying all the way around where the bed's going to be. That way I can see exactly how it's going to lay out. I can stand back and look at it, make sure it looks like I want it to look. Another way to do that, if you don't want to use spray paint initially, is if you take an old garden hose and lay it out and just position it at the locations where the bed's going to be. Stand back and look at it. If you're happy with it, then take the spray paint and just spray all around. I just use black spray paint from Lowe's, a couple bucks, and one can lasts a long time. Once you've done that, then you want to actually get the bed laid out. And you want to have a nice separation between the grass and the bed itself, because you want to be able to manage that and to maintain it after it's installed really easy. So the best way to do that is take a spade-tipped shovel and go all the way around your mark and push it down about 3 inches. Go all the way around the entire bed and push it down about 3 inches. Then you want to go back around the width of the shovel. So take the width of the shovel, and then wherever that lies, go all the way around and push it down about 3 inches on the inside of that. That way you have a slot all the way around the outside edge and another one on the inside edge, the width of the shovel. Once you've done that, then just go through and scrape out that with the spade-tipped shovel, easy for me to say, all the way around. That way you get a nice little trench in between your bed and your grass. A good tip for that is as you're doing it, if you go through after you've cut the slot on the inside and outside, is to go about every foot and just push the shovel down into the ground and chop whatever's in that stretch. That way when you go to shoveling it up, it comes up in sections about the length of your shovel versus trying to do a whole big stretch at one time. It's too heavy. Once you've got that, then it's time to put the weed barrier down. Now before I do the weed barrier, I'll usually go through and spray some kind of herbicide, some kind of pet-safe herbicide down in the whole area and give that a couple of days to do its thing. That way all the weeds and grass or whatever it is that you have in there that you don't want, you can get rid of initially before you put your weed barrier down. So to do the weed barrier, you just roll it out. This is a 3-foot wide weed barrier. You roll it out and you roll it beyond where the edge of your curve is if you do a curve like this. So you're going to take this and you're going to stretch it all the way beyond the end of where that curve is going to be. I'm going to get up and do that. So now I have it all the way beyond where the end of my curve is. And that'll be important when you get ready to cut it. Lay it in there with about a 3-inch space on the outside edge so that you got plenty of room to cut it. And then you're going to just take your nails, tack it down, nice and secure. Then you're going to roll out this whole section with your weed barrier and stick nails in about every 3 or 4 feet as you go. Keep the wind from blowing it up. So once that's done, let me just stick a few nails in here so you can get the idea. All right, so that's, just assume that I went all the way down. Once that's done, then you're going to take your scissors and just cut right along the edge, right in the center of your trench, all the way around. That way you get a nice clean cut and you don't have anything flopping around or anything. Once you've done that, then you're going to take the nails and tack them on the inside. Let me actually show you how to cut that. So I can give you a demonstration. So basically, just stick it in right through the weed barrier in the center of the trench, and then just cut it right along like that, and make a nice clean cut just like that. Then you can pull this part away, and then you're going to take the weed barrier and tuck it under the edge of that inside edge of that trench, and then just stick a nail in there from the side like that. And you're going to do that about every 3 or 4 feet. That way it's all tucked in nicely inside your trench. One thing you want to keep in mind is if you're on a slope like this is, you want to start at the bottom and work up. That way the ones above it are over these, so that when the water runs down, it'll run smoothly down over your weed barrier. Another couple of tips is, if you have large trees that you plant that come in, let's say larger than 5-gallon containers from the nursery, go ahead and plant those first, because when you plant plants, you want to make a hole about double the size of the nursery pot. So if you get a plant in a 1-gallon container, dig about a 2-gallon hole. Those are easy to dig through your weed barrier, because all you do is just cut yourself out a nice easy circle like that, about that size, and you can easily dig in there and make a hole. But if you're planting trees, large bushes, anything that comes over a 5-gallon pot size, go ahead and plant those first, and then run the weed barrier in around the edge of those, because it's a lot easier to do that than to cut out a big huge hole and be digging all that dirt out on top of your weed barrier. So be sure, and if anything over 5 gallons, go ahead and plant it first, and then do the weed barrier around that. Once you've done that and gotten your plants in place, which we'll talk about on other videos, then it's just time to put your ground cover down, and then you'll be good to go. Now, as far as maintenance, all you have to do is every time you cut the grass, or every other time, go around with your weed eater, just right along the edge with the edger, and just go right along in the center of that trench, and it'll make a nice even line for you. And it also keeps a nice separation between the grass and whatever product you have in there, whether it's pine straw, rocks, mulch, whatever, to keep it from getting intermingled. Because if you have like a Bermuda grass or something, that does crawl, and it'll crawl into your bed real easy if it's just an easy, smooth transition. If you have that little trench, it gives you a little separation. So that's basically all there is to installing the bed. You just have to take your time, get the weed barrier down, be sure and overlap about 3 inches as you go up, and be sure and tuck it in along the edge so that none of the plants can grow into it or out of it through the trench. And that's it. It's easy maintenance, and it looks great. When you're doing your beds, it's really important to have your circles be real circles, or have your curves be nice and even. Otherwise, it doesn't look right. But there's easy ways to get that done. And I'll show you on this bed how I did this one. So this particular bed here around this crepe myrtle is 5.5 feet in diameter. So in order to do this, what I did was, once I determined the size of the bed, whether it's 5 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, whatever, put your tape measure out on the width that you want it to be and find the center point. In this case, it's 2 feet, 2 3/4 feet. Once you get that area marked, if you don't have a plan in it, just stick a little pin in the ground where that is. And then all you do is just take your paint and make a dot right there and then the dot on the other end. That way you have your center, you know where your center point is, and you know where your two ends are. Then you just move the tape measure just a few inches at a time and do the same thing, and just do that all the way around. Just keep moving it. Keep the center point where it's supposed to be. Move it about 3 or 4 inches and just keep marking it. Once you get that done with a bunch of little marks all the way around, all you got to do then is just take your spray paint, connect the dots, and you have a perfect circle. Then you can do all the other things where you trench it out. Or if it's a small bed like this one, I'll usually just go ahead and cut the whole thing out about 3 inches down because having a trench on something this small doesn't really make sense. That's for a larger bed. Something like this, I'll just scrape all this out about 3 inches down, put the weed barrier down just like I normally do, and then go ahead and get the plant in place if it's small. If it's a larger plant like this, crepe myrtle, it's best to go ahead and plant it before you do the weed barrier. As I mentioned before, you don't have to dig such a big hole and mess up your weed barrier so much in the center. So that's how you get a nice big circle or a big curve if you have a place that has a curve like this yard does on the other side. So that's all it takes. Very easy. Okay, in your landscape, there may be a time that you're going to have a bed that's going to be out in the middle of the yard that you need to be perfectly straight, but you don't have anything to reference it to. If you're running a bed along a driveway or a walkway, you can measure off of that and get your measurements. But if you don't have anything like that and you're just out in the open area, which I've done before, you want to make sure that that line is completely straight and doesn't wiggle in and out, because that really looks bad. That's very easy to do though. All you need to do is take at least 4 stakes of some sort and find out where you want the line to start, and just stick one of those in the ground right where you want that to start. Then go to the far end of where you want it to end. Say if I wanted this bed to end right here and I didn't have the house to reference it off of, it was just wide open space, and I would just take it, stick it in the ground, and get it kind of lined up with something in the distance, you know, a tree or something like that, just so you can kind of make sure that these are straight up and down, and stand back from it. Make sure it's exactly where you want the bed to start and end. Now, something this short is pretty easy to make a straight line, but this may go 40, 50, 60 feet, and you could easily be going in and out. But the easy way to make sure you get a nice straight line is take another post, stick it right in the middle between those two, as straight up and down as you can get it, and then stand back, close one eye, lean over, and make sure that the posts all disappear into each other. In this case, this one needs to come over about 1/4 inch. Just pull it out, stick it back in the ground, about 1/4 inch, and back. I need to straighten it a little bit. It's really important you get these straight up and down so that your line ends up straight. Let's adjust it one more quick time here. Right there should be it. Oops, it's not straight, so it takes a minute to get this right, but you want to get it right. Okay, so now my posts are all disappearing into each other, making one solid line. So I know that so I'm straight so far. And if I want to continue on, then I just go another 8 or 10, 6 or 8 feet, stick another post in the ground, look like that. Or if I wanted to put one in the middle of them, stick that in the ground, Just make sure everything lines up good. And then once you get all those into place, then you can take either a long, like 2x4 or something like that, or even one of your posts, and just lay it up against the other post. Make sure they're close enough where you can lay it, and now you got a nice straight line. Take your paint it that way, and then depending on how wide you want your bed, say 3 feet, measure over 3 feet, make that line, and then you're ready to trench it out, put the weed barrier down, put you in some plants. So that's really all you do in order to get a nice straight bed for planting. It's out in the open area with no reference points. So that's it to doing planting beds, really beautiful planting beds. Once you get them installed, and it's easy to maintain them, just edge along the edge of them. Replenish if you use pine straw or mulch, replenish that a couple times a year. And then just keep the plants pruned. And we have videos on that, so you'll see all that. So be sure and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of that content if you love this kind of stuff. And also, give us any comments. We'd love to hear from you on the comments. If you have any questions or anything, be sure and send us a comment. And hit that like button if you got some benefit out of this. And check out some of our other videos about how to prune roses, how to do other landscaping projects in your yard. And we're going to be putting out videos. In addition to the ones we have, we're putting out videos every week on new things that you can do so that you can do your own landscaping. So until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.